Hi everyone, in this watch and learn video I'm going to teach you how to build almost perfect header templates applicable to a wide range of different websites. It's a kind of a header with a logo on the left hand side, center navigation and the functional part on the right. The header is supposed to be sticky, it shrinks a little bit on scroll and it changes the background color. I'll also show you how to switch position of the columns and how to create your own custom navigation for mobile devices too. As usual, you'll be able to download the training file, but this time it'll have 3 separate importable templates: the header, the mobile pop-up navigation menu, and the test page, the demo page. So you'll definitely need Elementor PRO this time. In case you plan to buy the license, please find the link in the description of this video because I'm in the affiliate program of Elementor and that's how you can help me earn some cash. Besides Elementor PRO, you're gonna need Steroids for Elementor add-on, whose download link can be found in the description of this video. Okay, let's go to work. First, I'll go to WordPress dashboard and I'll create new header template. The header itself should rely on 3 columns, so I'll pick the 3 columns section setup. I'll be here for a moment and I'll do a few initial adjustments that include adding some padding to the section. I'll make the section full width. I'll remove the columns gap, just some basic stuff indeed. My plan is to fine-tune the header from the default test page because it's much easier to work on a header while there's some content below. Right now there's nothing that I can hold on to, so orientation-wise I'm pretty much lost. For the sake of simplicity, my logo is going to be the text logo. However, rest assured that any action or the CSS code that relates to the text logo will work for the graphic or the image logo as well. At this point, I'll just put it there and work on its final size once I open my default test page. Likewise, I'm going to add the main navigation to the middle column and I'll do some initial adjustments. I also have to mention that when you import the header template of the training file, you won't see identical menu. This is the menu that I have created or composed in my own WordPress website. The most likely, you won't see any menu at all initially, unless you pick the one from the nav menu layout. Okay? That's going to be enough to launch my header template. All other elements will be added subsequently in just a moment. Before I open my default test page, I have to publish the header. Now, why am I asked to define the display condition? Well, in case you have a website that uses more than just one header template, you'll have to let Elementor know which header to use with other content-related templates. Hence, my imaginary website needs only one header. I'll be good with an entire website condition, so I'll simply hit Save and Close button. Now I'll go back to the dashboard and I'm gonna open my default test page. Elementor allows me to switch between templates without leaving the editor, which is a really awesome feature. Okay, as you can see, the header makes much more sense now when there's some content below. It just feels better, at least for me. How about that currently empty third column? I don't know what term you'd use to refer that column, but I like to call it a functional column. You've seen it many times already, I guess, so you know its purpose. Quite often you can see it's been used for a sign-in, sign-up button, a shopping cart link, search icon, maybe a call us number, or the contact page link, whatever. So in this tutorial, I'll add the shopping cart link and the search button. I'm going to copy-paste both of these from the default test page in order to save some time. And now you can see how useful that switching between templates in a preview actually is. Way simpler than switching between the browser tabs and doing refresh for every tiny little change you make. I also forgot to mention that this is not a real link to the shopping cart. It's a regular button only and it won't work in case you got WooCommerce plugin installed. Alrighty, now that I have all the elements of my header template, I'll handle the column size and responsiveness. First of all, I want to align the content of each column to the middle, vertically. It's not a must. Your own setup can be different and you'll maybe want to align everything to bottom. It's your choice. As the fact the widgets of the functional column are inline position, my last column horizontal alignment will be end. This is how I can align inline position elements. The next step is to maximize the available space for the main navigation. That's why I have to determine the minimal width of the first and the last column. When it comes to the desktop machines or computers, these two columns width must be fixed, which means that the middle column is the only loose column. In a nutshell, elementary columns are not supposed to be fixed, which means there's no way to set the column width in pixels, but rather only as a percentage value. That's why from now on, I'll need some help from the Breaking Bad extension. It'll also help me to reorder columns for different viewports a little bit later, you'll see. So my logo column could be somewhere between 150 and 200 pixels, including the column margin on the right hand side. The margin of 20 pixels is meant to maintain the spacing between the logo and the main navigation when it comes to so-called edge case scenario. I suppose I wouldn't have to juggle that much trying to guess the right size if I use the image logo in first place. But anyhow, it looks like 175 will be perfectly fine. Likewise, I'll do the same to the functional column. If you never heard of the Breaking Bad extension, it's actually one of many extensions available in the form of the Elementor add-on named Steroids for Elementor. It's completely free and you can download it from the official WordPress plugins repository. Alright, it looks like 130 pixels is going to suffice required space. Now that I know the size of my two edge columns, the middle one, which is supposed to be fluid, will have the width that is equal to 100% minus the left and minus the right hand side column width. For that very purpose, I can use the CSS calculate function and actually let the browser handle the width of my middle column at any given viewport size. I don't need to care about it. I'm also going to align nav menu to the center of the parent column. However, that's not the real center of the viewport, not in this case. Why? Well, obviously because the functional column is like 45 pixels shorter than the logo column. And that's with the purpose, of course, with the purpose of maximizing the space available to the nav menu widget. So if you go for the real center, two edge columns width must be identical. Let's switch to the tablet mode now. Let's see how everything looks like at 768 pixels. So we obviously got to the point where we need to decide whether the hamburger menu should take place or maybe there's some other more elegant solution available. I don't want to go for the hamburger menu so quickly because that alternative navigation won't show up at 768 pixels. That's the lowest tablet viewport size. It'll actually show up much sooner at 1140 pixels. That's why I'll rather move my nav menu column below the two edge columns and thus gain a whole lot more space. While in tablet mode, I'll choose the logo column and change its column order to 1. This is where the Breaking Bad extension becomes useful once again. My nav menu column order should be 3, while the functional column gotta be 2. As you can see, things do not look right yet, but once I update columns width, everything will set into place just fine. So the first column should be 50% wide for tablet devices, the second one likewise 50%, and finally the nav menu column will be 100% wide. Personally, I think that this is quite decent alternative solution to the hamburger menu, which opens up a whole bunch of different layout options. For instance, you can keep everything as is, why not, if you like it. I could also leave the logo intact and not change its parent column initial size. And then I can align the content of the second column to the opposite side. And finally, align the nav menu to the left-hand side. You can also reposition the content of two top columns to the center of the viewport. It depends how you're going to do that. Text widget has its own alignment controls, while the inline position content can be controlled by the parent column settings. Just like that. Anyhow, decide what works best for you, because that kind of a setup brings a lot. Okay, let's switch to the mobile view. Well, it's obvious that the current setup requires some adjustments, of course, in case you are about to keep it. However, my goal is to bring the hamburger menu next to the logo and make the functional column take its place instead. That's something that requires a little bit of adjustment again, so I'll have to change the column order and update columns width. Once again, that kind of a header setup is very flexible in terms of arranging possibilities and with respect to a different viewport sizes. I've made a lot of tests when it comes to the page header layout, and this one is definitely the best choice, trust me. It can even be upgraded, so to speak, in a sense that additional column can be added atop of these 3 columns, and all you gotta do is to be sure to make it 100% wide, and you'll get enough space for another menu, literally. Okay, to be honest, I dislike Elementor's default hamburger menu and I want to replace it with another, more elegant solution. That very solution is named Popup template. But in case you are okay with what you see on the screen right now, you can go for it. There's really nothing wrong with the default hamburger menu. So the first step towards my goal is to hide Elementor's hamburger menu completely by using the custom CSS code. So I'll highlight the hamburger, then go to Advanced tab, I'm going to expand Custom CSS panel, and I'm going to add a few lines of CSS code. So the code that I've added will make my nav menu widget disappear completely across all devices, because that hamburger menu is nothing but a compressed version of the normal menu, so to speak. With respect to the mobile first rule, I have to add media query that is supposed to keep it hidden on mobile devices only and visible elsewhere. I can do that by using media query. Okay, now that I got rid of the unwanted mobile menu, I have to add the custom link that will be used to trigger a pop-up containing the alternative navigation. Let's get back to the desktop view to create one. Why am I switching back the view? Because whenever you are about to add a new widget in Elementor, you should start from desktop view, or otherwise your new widget will be missing initial values. There's some sort of descending inheritance that in Elementor doesn't work in reverse for all responsive controls. The pop-up trigger can either be a button or the icon widget. I'll use the icon widget. More precisely, I'm going to add the bars icon. I guess that the size of 28 pixels will work fine, but in case not, I'm going to handle it at the end. With the new widget being added, things became a little bit untidy. So in order to keep everything in a single row, I'll change positioning of both nav menu and the pop-up trigger icon. Both of them must be inline position. I can tell that all of these actions wouldn't be necessary if I chose to keep the default hamburger menu, right? However, I'm sure that at the end, you'll be able to say it was worth the efforts. At the end, I have to reposition the content of the middle column, because from now on, this is how the alignment of the nav menu is supposed to be managed. My nav menu is inline position now. Of course, I do not need my pop-up trigger be visible elsewhere but on mobile devices only. That's why I'll make it hidden for desktop and the tablet view. Let's now recheck responsiveness for tablets first, just to be sure that all is good. Yeah, it looks like it is. Okay, now the mobile view. Alright, the icon is visible. Original hamburger menu no longer exists. But if you ever need it for some reason, you can reach it through the navigator, through Elementor Navigator, because it's actually not gone forever. And the final step in making the mobile menu fully functional is to actually create the pop-up with the menu. A while ago, I have made a tutorial named Horizontal to Off-Canvas Menu in Elementor PRO that shows how exactly to set up everything in details. I don't want to repeat myself and go through the same procedure once again now. I'll just use the pop-up that I have created before. It'll save a lot of time. And in case you're confused with what I'm going to do next, I advise you to watch the video that I just mentioned. So now I just have to create the link between my bars icon and the pop-up. This is how I can do that. So I'm going to highlight the bars icon first, go to the Content tab, click Dynamic Tags icon at the end. I'm going to choose the pop-up from the list. Now I'm going to click the input field itself to bring up the pop-up options, and I'm finally going to pick the target pop-up. Of course, you should know the title of your pop-up. Alright, that should be it. Let's save the work and do the final preview now. The preview will tell me what improvements I can take, how much extra space I got, and according to these I'll do the final adjustments. By resizing the browser window, I can clearly tell there's enough space to increase the font size of the nav menu, as well as to add more space between the menu items. I'm talking about the moment right before the first or the tablet breakpoint occurs. There's plenty of room to even add the additional link. Quite often people ask what to do when their website has too many items to fit the space of the main navigation. Well, one of the options is the drop-down menu. You can group your menu items if you have to. Another one might be the Smarter Menu add-on for Elementor that I made a while ago. You can find the link in the description of this video if you like to check it out. But there's also one very true statement that I read a few years ago. And the statement says that if you cannot identify 7 most important things to put on your menu without using drop-downs and with concise, informative descriptions of the links on mine, then most likely you haven't put enough thought into what your website is all about. Another flaw that I spot is that the pop-up remains visible upon browser window being resized, so we'll have to force hide it by using the custom CSS. Other than that, everything else looks just fine. Let's polish all up and then move to the fun part. So first I'm going to increase the font size of the main navigation. Let's suppose that something like 16 pixels will do fine. Okay, and then I'm going to increase the spacing between menu items for additional 10 to 15 pixels, maybe 20. Let's see whether 20 pixels, which is increase of 100%, let's see whether it breaks the line or not. Oh yeah, there's plenty of space. I could even add another menu item in case I need it and still keep the spacing between the menu items at 30 to 35 pixels, which is really nice. Plenty of room. Okay, let's move to the custom CSS panel and handle the pop-up menu that remains visible upon window resize. So I'll highlight the section of my header template. I'm going to select the Advanced tab and expand the custom CSS panel. My pop-up menu has the custom class name main nav pop-up, and its custom class name will be used as a reference in case I need to style it up by using my own CSS code or rules. Since I skipped the part of how to create the pop-up, I'll go back to my template, my pop-up template for a moment, and I'm going to show you where that custom class name is supposed to be found. Alright, once you open the pop-up in Elementor, its settings are kind of hidden behind that cog icon, which is confusing for many users, especially new ones. So you just have to hit the cog icon first, then select the Advanced tab and spot the CSS classes option at the very bottom of the Advanced panel. This is where I have added the custom class name. Alright, let's get back to my custom CSS panel and hide that pop-up for any device whose viewport size is greater than 768 pixels. Obviously, I have to rely on a CSS media query, which is essentially nothing but the CSS condition or the clause. So the following CSS rule is meant to be executed only in case the viewport size exceeds 768 pixels. That rule doesn't actually close the pop-up, it rather hides it only. I believe everything is okay now. I'll do the final check once I'm done with the rest of the CSS, okay? If you recall, I have mentioned at the beginning that the header is meant to be sticky. It's supposed to shrink a little bit as well as the logo, and it should change the background color on scroll. Let's see what it takes to accomplish all of that. With the header section highlighted, I'm going to select the Advanced tab and expand Motion Effects panel. My header should be sticky, it'll stick to the page top. The effect takes place on desktop, tablet and mobile devices, and I just have to define the effects offset, which represents some sort of delay in pixels, so to speak, before the stickiness comes into place. So I'll enter 150 pixels, which is going to be just fine. Alright, let's go back to the custom CSS panel. Before adding any code, I have to mention that Elementor assigns particular class name to each and every sticky element, be it a section or the widget. And the class name assigned by Elementor is Elementor Sticky Effects. So if we want to add a new CSS rule to the currently selected element that has Elementor Sticky Effects class name assigned at any given moment by Elementor, I'd simply append that very class name to the end of selector keyword. It is important not to use any space between selector and the class name itself. Hence my master section initial padding is 30 pixels in top and bottom, and in order to reduce the height of the header, I'll set the padding to a new value which is 10 pixels. The important rule must be used, otherwise the default settings prevail. And if you scroll the page, you can see that after 150 pixels being scrolled out, required effect takes the place. However, everything happens instantly and which doesn't look that nice. So I need another CSS rule, the one that actually animates the padding reduction. For that very purpose, I'll attach transition CSS property to my master section. If you wonder why am I not using the Elementor Sticky Effects class name here as well, it's because transition property is added with respect to the section itself, regardless any custom class name that may be assigned to it. I just made my section animatable, as simple as that. If you want to learn more about the CSS transitions, please ask Google. Alright, if I scroll the page now, you can see the whole point of adding transition property. But what if I want to make the logo smaller as well? In that case, it's a good idea to first add some custom class name to the logo, so that I can refer it in my CSS code. My logo is going to become the custom class name of my logo. Now I can go back to the custom CSS panel and create another CSS rule that is supposed to handle the logo resizing. Of course, my logo should be resized only when the stickiness threshold is reached, or otherwise only in case the master section has Elementor Sticky Effects class name assigned. As the fact I'm using the text logo in this tutorial and you might use the image logo, I will not reduce the logo size by changing the font size property because it won't work for both. I'll rather go for the transform CSS property and scale the logo down for 20%. Likewise, I want that smooth animation to be applied to the logo resizing as well. But this time, I don't need to open a separate transition rule. I can simply add the logo class name to already existing rule instead. And all I gotta do is to comma separate all the elements that are meant to use that particular CSS rule. As you can see, now the logo gets resized with the page scroll as well. And what I want to do at the end is to change the background color and maybe add a subtle shadow once the header is resized. That's going to be the final touch. Because of the fact that these two new rules relate to the master section, which already has a couple of them defined, I can simply append the background color and the box shadow properties to the existing block. In case you need any other visual change with respect to the header, and if that visual change includes particular CSS property, you can also add it below existing ones. It'll automatically become animated if the property is actually animatable, just like any other CSS property from the list. At the end, I'll save my work and go back to the front end to see how everything works like. I gotta say that this was pretty much long tutorial, at least for me, and I hope you didn't give up too early for that reason. But at least you got a bulletproof website header that can be used over and over, the header that is customizable, highly customizable to a certain degree, and the most important, it works perfectly across all devices. Don't forget to check the video description for more useful links and all the stuff related to this video tutorial. Until the next one, stay well, peace and love.